My wife and I are presently relishing in the wonderful presence of our daughter Lily, our son-in-law Jean, and our grandchildren Louis and Autumn being with us for, through this next coming week as well. When we get together quite often as family, and then also with other friends on occasion, one of the things that we love to do, and I think is a pastime that many people do when they gather, besides doing some other things, is we like board games. We like to play some board games, Anybody have a favorite board game? Monopoly. Boy, I didn't set her up for this either. Monopoly, right? Monopoly, right? It is. Monopoly is an amazing game. I looked up some facts about Monopoly. Anybody know how old it is? Not far. It's actually, the official game now is 80 years old, although there's some contestation of that. Just like we hear in our gospel today, the man approaching Jesus to be arbitrator, because certainly in Jewish tradition the rabbi was the arbitrator in terms of law, and there was some debate about who actually started the game of Monopoly, because it had another name prior, but it goes back beyond 80 years. It goes back beyond 80 years. In our society today, when everything is so technologically involved, they even have the games now, virtual reality. You put the thing on and you play, and you may hit somebody who's next to you while you're doing that playing or whatever it may be. But we still go back to these board games. Monopoly, people might have thought would have been forgotten and be a relic, but no. It's lasted to this very day. So much so that the numbers may not be exact, but they say that somewhere around 5 million board games were sold last year. Somewhere around 5 million board games were sold last year. More than 1 billion people have played Monopoly. It is published in 47 languages and sold in 114 different countries. Looked up something. CBS had a little article on Monopoly, and one of the things it says is like all good games, Monopoly gives players a clear goal. Monopoly gives players a clear goal. Drive your opponents into bankruptcy. Drive your opponents into bankruptcy, which leads us to perhaps the most important reason for its popularity. The incomparable thrill of sending your fellow player to the poorhouse, right? Send your fellow player to the poorhouse while you simultaneously rake in the dough. Rake in the dough. We live in a society that indeed sometimes seems to glorify the entrepreneur. We live in a society, and the game Monopoly gives every pathetic wage slave person a chance to feel like one of them. One of them who has it all. At least for a couple of hours, maybe some minutes, depending. Take care and be on guard against all kinds of greed. Take care and be on guard against all kinds of greed. That is what our Lord tells us this day. Greed. There can be different definitions, but greed, I looked it up in one particular place, and it says an inordinate or insatiable longing, especially for wealth, status, and power. Something that becomes all-consuming. Sounds like addiction. Something that controls us. rather than us having control. All-consuming, inordinate. You know that old saying, out of the mouths of babes? Out of the mouths of babes? There's a pastor I know who was sharing a story one day, and I'd just like to share with you because I think it's very apropos to today. And he says, my daughter asked me a question, and the daughter was 8 years old. He said, my daughter asked me a question 3 times last week. As he said, she's 8, and whenever she persists in her inquiries, it usually means that the answers that I'm giving her are insufficient. So she persists. She persists with her questions. And the question arose in the car as we were driving past a rather affluent neighborhood on the way to the grocery store. You see, as he said, we're in the process of buying a larger house. We need a larger house, he says. Our family is growing. So whenever the children see a real estate sign in front of the house, they point to it. And my daughter spotted such a sign stuck in the grass in the front of a house in a very, very upscale neighborhood. And she said, Daddy, Daddy, what about that house? What about that house? She sang out. And she was pointing to a palatial 2-story brick home with a 4-car garage. That's a wonderful house, I replied. And then without thinking I added, but we can't afford even the front steps of that house. But why would we want to buy the front steps, she said. Why would we want to buy the front steps, Daddy? And she continued in all sincerity. I could see that I was getting in over my head, so I cut the conversation short by going right to the heart of the matter. I explained that the home was very expensive and that it would cost far more money than we could afford to pay. And just when I thought that I had deflected her question, she asked me in a matter-of-fact tone, then why don't we just get some more money? Then why don't we just get some more money? And not feeling like engaging the topic any further, I made the mistake of simply ending the conversation abruptly by telling her that only rich people live in homes like that. Only rich people live in homes like that. And we're not rich. And we're not rich. A day later, again in the car, as we were going to a nearby park to ride our bicycles, my darling daughter asked me another question. How do you become rich, Daddy? How do you become rich? And she asked, and then he said, I thought about it for a second, and then I answered, I don't know, honey. I don't know. I've never been rich, so I can't tell you how to get that way. I've never been rich, so I can't tell you how to get that way. Well, she took that one and ran with it. She replied without hesitation that when she grew up, she would learn how to become rich. She would buy that big house that they had seen, and then she would teach her father how to become rich as well. I think we pulled into the driveway about that time, and when I was ever thankful for being spared further and lengthy explanation once again, well, at least I thought I was. But then the very next morning she asked again, Daddy, are you sure you don't know how to become rich? Can't we find out how to become rich? And in a moment of exasperation, I blurted out, you get rich when you love money more than anything else in the world. You get rich when you love money more than anything else in the world. There was a long silence. And then my 8-year-old girl, that child, out of the mouths of babes, said, you know what then, Daddy? I don't want to be rich. I don't want to be rich. Because I don't want to love anything more than God. Because I don't want to love anything more than God. take care and be on guard against all kinds of greed. The parable we hear today is often referred to as the parable of the rich fool. The parable of the rich fool. But you know, if we look at it, if we analyze the parable, what's wrong with this man? He's not portrayed as wicked. His wealth, we don't hear anything about it being gotten from ill gain. He's not cheated anybody. He's certainly not a tax collector, and gosh almighty, Jesus over and over again gets on top of those tax collectors for what they've done. It doesn't appear as if he's stolen anything. So why so harsh, it seems? He's also a hard worker, apparently. He's a farmer. Any farmers here? It's not easy. It wasn't easy. And he's built up and he has abundance. And he decides that he wants to build barns for the abundance that he has. You know, I mean, maybe today we'd call that saving for a rainy day. You know, who knows? So what's the rub here in our gospel? What's the problem here in the gospel?